Good afternoon to you. Mark Stout with HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion. It is Thursday, the 15th day of October 2020. Are you ready for some really wild model output? Who isn't, right? I'm going to show you something as we get started here in just a moment that really shows you what happens when computer models give you just an incredible output, and you have to save it. You have to look and go, wow, that's one for the ages right there. So we're going to start with that. All right? Are you ready? Hopefully you're sitting down. This is the GFS Para, the Para GFS, the parallel. This is from the 6Z run, high resolution version. And look what happens. It creates this powerful hurricane in the Caribbean, goes west into the southeast Gulf, gets blocked, and then turns southeastward, buries itself over Cuba, and starts to die away. Run it again. This nice GIF animation that I found on one of the message boards. Wow. There you go. Is it impossible? Well, no, it's not impossible. The physics behind why this happens are fully explainable, but it's highly improbable that this will happen. You know what I mean? It's just one of those runs where you go, dude, what the heck? But some of the things that we see there are, well, a hurricane forms in the Caribbean. That's plausible this time of year. It starts to take on a track to the northwest, then it gets turned eastward by a trough, then it gets blocked by a ridging, then another trough comes in to send it back to the east. It's just wild and wacky, that is for sure. So there you go. Just thought I would start off with a little model mayhem for today. The reality, though, is this. Couple of yellow areas to keep an eye on, nothing over the next few days to really be worried about at all, but a couple of features to watch. It is mid-October. Southwest Caribbean is prime real estate for something to develop, as is the Southwest Atlantic. Both of these areas have a feature to keep an eye on, to keep monitoring, but again, nothing is imminent. There's nothing even remotely resembling that crazy model run of the parallel GFS, which, by the way, talking with Jack Sillen recently about exactly what is the Para GFS or the GFS parallel. Basically, it's the new and upcoming version of the operational GFS, from what I understand, and is running in parallel to the current operational GFS, and they get to see how the two do. Here's the operational, here's the parallel, and this one eventually, the parallel, will replace the operational once they work out any kinks and any problems. And maybe what we saw there with that ridiculous 6Z run is an indication that there are some kinks to be worked out. But that's what the Para GFS is, from what I understand, and a big thanks to Jack for explaining it to me. Probably more than a week ago, I gave him a call and I said, hey, what exactly is the Para GFS? And who better to ask than an up-and-coming meteorologist who goes to Cornell? I mean, come on. So there you go. It would make, what's the character from The Office that went to Cornell? Andy. It'd make Andy proud. But anyway, inserting pop culture into these updates, never a good idea. But anyway, nothing resembling the Para GFS, which is good. And if we look at the satellite animation, that helps to confirm what we're seeing out there from the Hurricane Center. Again, this is the area to watch over the coming days, as is this area. We still have the remnants of this 93L down here, tropical wave, that's just kind of hanging out, just popcorn showers, not much in association with it, which is good news because Brent, our good buddy Brent, is flying back. And that's actually wrong. I thought he was going to fly from Mobile over here to Miami and then down to San Juan and or St. Thomas. I don't know. But it turns out he's going from Mobile to Houston and I believe straight on down to St. Thomas, if I'm not mistaken. But at least he will land without too much in the way of storminess and whatnot associated with that tropical wave that's moving through. Here's this powerful cold front that's heading down into the lower 48. Much colder air behind it. I don't like that. That's no good for me. I like warm weather. But elsewhere, the tropics generally quiet right now. We're seeing just not much in the way of organized convection, but there are a few impulses out and about that we certainly need to keep an eye on. I mean, it's hurricane season. Of course we do. There's nothing out of the ordinary with that. It's still very much hurricane season. And we can look at it from a different perspective. Here are the impulses. There's one there, some energy up here that's going to try to gather and sink southwest over this way. And a little piece of energy here, another one here, and then very, very, very subtle hints of vorticity or spin in the atmosphere and energy trying to coalesce down in the southwest Caribbean, but really nothing to be too concerned with. Now, instead of doing what I normally do and just let's go through the GFS, whatever, it's going to show you a little bit of a different slant on things, a different look at how things might progress. That being said, let's just keep in mind, what do we know right now? Well, we know it's mid-October. Hurricane season is still here. We have plenty of warm water. We have the La Nina. It's been a very active season so far with a lot of named storms, some of them becoming quite powerful, like Hurricane Laura. Teddy did as well. Paulette impacting Bermuda. I mean, we've had a lot of impacts. Okay, these are the things that we know. We also know there are a few impulses down there to keep an eye on. It's not like the map is blank and the slate is clean and there's nothing to even worry about. Well, there is nothing to worry about. I don't like that word worry. Worry means you really don't understand the phenomenon, or it's very, very intense and you haven't done anything to prepare. Then you should worry. So, we know that there are items to watch, all right, different areas. All right, so that being said, instead of just going in, here's the GFS and here's 5 days out and whatever, let's just take a look at a different perspective. So this is another GIF animation. This is from the Canadian, the CMC, the Canadian model. Up here it's referred to as the GEM, whatever, it's the Canadian. And this is the precip rate and sea level pressure, thicknesses in the 1,000 to 500 millibar area. It's just meteorological jargon. Bottom line, is very easy, at least for me, hopefully it is for you, to see our systems here. This is the 12Z run, and it starts out in the time frame here. This is from Tropical Tidbits. Starts out around day 4 and goes out to day 10. And the two things that you obviously notice are the development of the system down here and the development of this subtropical feature over here that eventually ends up over the northern Atlantic. All right? So why do I bring this up? Well, this year we have seen quite a dramatic shift in the ability of the global models, namely the GFS and the Euro, especially the Euro, at what we call tropical cyclogenesis, the beginnings of tropical cyclones, sniffing out their development, however you want to look at it. All in all, though, the Canadian has done a pretty good job. It used to be regarded as sort of a convective, happy, crazy uncle. Sometimes that's Joe Bastardi's term for it. You know Joe Bastardi. Some of you do. The Canadian has had the model, the global model. It's had its issues, and all kidding aside, and certainly no indictment of the scientists that build the Canadian model, the global model. It's not an indictment against them. I don't laugh at them. It's just over the years the model has created some wild-looking runs. We know that. But in the recent years, especially the last couple of years, this model has been improved. The physics get improved, the different equations. I have no idea, honest to goodness, how they do it. I mean, we're predicting the future with these things. It's remarkable. It's kind of like watching amazing computer animation in modern-day movies. I get the idea of computer animation, but how do they make it so good? I mean, honestly, it's just remarkable. Or a completely animated film like something from Pixar. It's all the same. It's zeros and ones inside of a computer that renders out, in the case of a Pixar film, something really remarkable that we watch, and you get a soundtrack and narration and all the audio put to it, and it's an amazing accomplishment. Numeric computer models are very similar. You have input, the people program it, it gets ready to be operational, and then boom, you get these outputs, every 4 hours, every 6 hours, every 12 hours, whatever the case may be. So the Canadian, I know it's a long story to get to my point here, it has improved, all right? So it's interesting because it's showing a scenario where it takes some time, but we do get a system developing in the Northwest Caribbean Sea, as well as development out in the subtropical Atlantic from another system, which, if it came to fruition, would give us 2 more named storms at the very least. So that's an interesting take. Okay, the Canadian has done better this year. Not as many false positives, as we say, where it's just spitting out storm after storm, what we call convective feedback. It's just done better. All right, so that's interesting to note that between about 4 days from now and the next 10 days, the window of opportunity should be opening for something to develop in the Caribbean. And this is, duh. I mean, we know. So again, we're trying to follow the evidence here. The pattern's there. We saw the update from Dr. Klotzbach yesterday about the second half of October forecast to be busier than average, above normal activity. The model guidance is suggesting it. The GFS has some crazy runs. The Euro shows basically nothing, depending on what hour you look at and what run. But the Canadian has been fairly consistent. All right, so I'm just bringing that up. Another way to look at this is to see what other people who know more than I are talking about. And here's a good one here. Yakov Kantor. I know him as Yakov Consor. That's fine. We'll just call him Yakov. He is I think he's still in Jerusalem, if I'm not mistaken. And I've known him for a long time. He's a meteorologist. All right. He's originally from Long Island. He's in the Middle East right now. And he's working on commodities and weather risk. That's a big field. And so I caught this from a message board. And somebody posted it. I followed it on Twitter here. And so here we go. Let's see what Yakov's talking about. So he says, regarding tropical cyclone development location and potential in the Caribbean, I would put much more weight on the GEFS, which is the GFS Ensemble Forecast System, than the EPS, which is the European Ensemble Prediction System. The EPS likely has a decent handle on the subtropical development, but the GFS and its ensembles, I'm paraphrasing Yakov here, has been much better on development in the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean this year. So this is what I talk about. We have crowdfunding. People fund important things in their lives that matter to them. And we also have crowdsourcing. You get people together in a setting where they know what they're talking about, and generally speaking, you can come up with some very good results. You find people that know what they're talking about. That can go against you with some conspiracy theory groups, etc. You know how social media, there can be a very dark side to it. But in this case, when you look for people that know what they're talking about, Yakov's one of them, Eric Webb, Jack Sillen, Dr. Ventris, Ben Knoll, and the list goes on and on and on. Philippe, you need to ask him if it's Papin or Papin, who Philippe, by the way, is now down at the National Hurricane Center. Congratulations to him. He's now a hurricane specialist, if you didn't know that. Anyhow, there are people, both true degreed meteorologists, like Yakov, and there are people that aren't, but are just very into the weather. And just because they didn't go to college and get a degree on a piece of paper doesn't mean that they don't know what they are looking for or how to interpret it. So anyway, I'm just explaining all this so you understand the thought process here. I like to bring in other sources. I don't know everything. And when I do, which will never happen, I will quit and do something else. So there you go. We're safe. Mark's not going to ever quit because I will never know everything. So back to what Yakov was saying. Continuing. However, when it comes to the upper pattern over North America and the Western Atlantic and how it influences steering for any Caribbean and subtropical Atlantic tropical cyclones, I would place more weight on the EPS, the Ensemble Prediction System, he's saying. The GEFS has been behind on trends aloft and has a bias of being too progressive. There you go. Too progressive, and we're not talking politics here. This is in weather, and knocking down the Western Atlantic ridge too quickly. And we saw that to some extent with Delta, that the GFS was more east for a while, the Euro was more west. The Euro did a better job once Delta had formed. So that's an interesting observation. Generally speaking, that the GEFS, the Ensemble Forecast System, has broken down the ridge too much. And so another little tidbit here, a little interesting nugget. All right. Then, obviously a weather enthusiast here, Kane Tracker 79, and that says it all. Now here's a shout out to you, Kane Tracker. Fascinated with weather, especially hurricanes, since, 1979. I like that. That's the year of Hurricane Frederick, by the way. So Kane Tracker says, well, so if you consider the GEFS for tropical development and the EPS for U.S. patterns and western Atlantic ridges, the end result could be a strong hurricane not being swept as east as the GFS would suggest. Very likely the Florida Peninsula is in the crosshairs of this possible hurricane. Now that is certainly speculation right there. You know, when you say very likely and stuff like that, this is just observation. There's nothing wrong with that. Kane Tracker 79 is trying to put the pieces together. And then you get some grounding of it, so to speak, and some verification of what it all means. Yakov finishes with, I agree that the risk for Florida is greater than the GEFS and the EPS members alone would suggest. However, given the disturbance is at least 5 days away from forming into a tropical cyclone, I would not get any more specific than that at this stage. I mean, come on, that is perfect. I love it. See, there's peace and harmony on some part of the internet. How often do you get to hear that? I'm laughing because it's true. Most of what we see is just noise and people yelling and cursing at each other, and it's politics, and whoa. And even in the entertainment and the sports world, it all just can go off the rails. And it can do the same thing in weather, no doubt. But then you can bring it home and bring it back to a happy medium. Everything gets into balance. When you get a statement like this from Yakov, I think it's fantastic. That, as I mentioned, and I'm trying to throw my part in as well, what I know, and again, it's a lot, it's not everything. We know the pattern is going to be favorable. We got some players on the field to seed what might happen. The genesis is probably going to happen. We don't know exactly when, we don't know exactly where, and we don't know what the weather pattern is going to be in terms of steering beyond 5 days. Forget it. And then you go back to seeing that run from the GFS the para-GFS, whatever, the parallel. That is absolutely crazy. All right, so there you go. That's how I've approached things today. I hope it all makes sense, and maybe you follow Yakov yourself. Now, a good meteorologist to follow, and I like showing other people, like I've mentioned. All right, so something a little different tonight. If you are a current Patreon supporter, and you're able to log into Patreon, or you can log into our HurricaneTrack Insider site, I am going to do this special event tonight. It'll be live on YouTube, and I was thinking about it, and actually I just made up my mind. It'll be live for everybody to watch, but only our supporters will have access to chat. The chat on tonight's live event will be turned off on YouTube, because I don't want people. It's kind of like my State of the Union, if you will. It's planning for the future. I appreciate Kari putting that graphic together for me. Kari's one of our supporters from over in the UK. Tonight, I usually do this once a year. I don't know if I did it last year, but I want to get everybody together, and we've got the greatest amount of support in my business's history, this project's history, assembled. Right now, we have over 1,000 people supporting, from the 900 and something that are directly involved on Patreon to the several dozen that we've had for more than 15 years when this all started. We began live streaming 15 years ago in 2005. So tonight is planning for the future. And it's going to start at 7:30 Eastern, actually 7:25, to give people time to jump on. You are more than welcome to tune in. I will post the link on Twitter, on Facebook. But only our supporters are going to have access to the chat, our special chat that we have. It's our proprietary chat from something called Cbox. That way we can all interact with each other. But everybody can tune in, everybody can watch, hear what I have to say. Maybe you get inspired and you decide, you know what, I'm going to support this myself. He said something that really resonates with me. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you're like, yeah, whatever, I'm just here when the hurricanes come and that's all I want to see. That is fine. It's fine. It's very much like public radio. We get a group of people that are in the position and that have the motivation to have sustaining support, and then it benefits everybody else. The greater good is affected positively, and that's what I want to continue to do for the future, and we're going to discuss that tonight. So 7:30 p.m. officially is when I will be live. It's going to be relatively unscripted. I've got some notes, no graphics, no PowerPoint, None of that. It's just me talking to you guys, mainly addressing our current group of crowdfunders. But everybody will be involved because you can all watch, and that's fine, and we'll see where it goes. All right, I'm excited about it. Give you a little bit of history. We'll talk about what we did this year and where we want to go, where I want us to go, shaped by your input and your funding for the future. Tonight, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, I will post the link. You won't miss it. And if you can't tune in, I will post the archive tomorrow, of course. All right? Well, that's it for me. Let me put this on the web and let you guys see it. I am Mark Sudduth. As always, thank you for tuning in. For HurricaneTrack.com, I appreciate you watching as always. I'll talk to you again tonight. And then, of course, I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.